The planet had no name. To the Terran Stellar Cartography Division, it was listed only as designation XR-157, a barren world orbiting a dying sun in an unremarkable sector. No signs of intelligent life, no major mineral deposits, just another wasteland in the endless void. Yet, as the TSV Pathfinder descended through the planet's dusty atmosphere, its crew realized the reports had been wrong. Commander Daniel Reeves, head of the exploratory team, leaned forward in his harness, eyes fixed on the landscape below. The land stretched for miles in every direction, but it was not the untouched wilderness of a forgotten world. This was a graveyard. "Jesus," whispered Lieutenant Maravos, the team's cynoarchaeologist. She adjusted her helmet visor, trying to take in the impossible sight. Scattered across the surface, massive war machines lay in ruin, their hulking frames twisted and broken by time. Some resembled tanks the size of buildings, their armor pitted and scarred. Others were bipedal constructs, eerily humanoid in shape, their limbs frozen mid-stride, as if caught in an eternal last stand. Craters the size of small cities marked impact points of weapons, far beyond human technology. "This isn't just a battlefield," Reeves muttered. "This was a war of extinction." The Pathfinder's pilot, Ensign Cole, struggled to stabilize the ship as violent wind currents swept across the surface. "We got high levels of residual radiation, sir," he reported. "Whatever happened here, it wasn't pretty." Dr. Voss tapped at her holo-tablet, scanning the wreckage. "Some of these machines have been here for over 10,000 years, but others..." She zoomed in on a cluster of debris. "These show decay consistent with something recent, maybe within the last 100 years." Reeves exchanged a glance with his second-in-command, Lieutenant Farrow. "That doesn't make sense. The war should be long over." Farrow's voice was quiet. What if it never ended? A shiver ran down Reeves' spine, but he shook it off. "Let's not jump to conclusions. We came here to study, not tell ghost stories." The Pathfinder touched down on a jagged plateau near the wreckage. As the team disembarked, the ground crunched beneath their boots. Ash, rust, and something that looked disturbingly like bone dust. Mara knelt beside a fallen machine, brushing away debris to reveal intricate engravings along its surface. This wasn't built by any species we've encountered before. She traced her gloved fingers over alien script, her excitement tempered by unease. But these markings, they're warning symbols. Farrow stood a few meters away, rifle at the ready. "Warning us about what?" Before anyone could answer, one of the research drones hovering above emitted a sharp electronic squeal. The signal cut off abruptly. Then the ground trembled. A low mechanical groan echoed across the battlefield, vibrating through the wreckage. The air itself seemed to hum with latent energy. Something, buried beneath the planet's surface, had just woken up. Reeves' heart pounded. Everyone back to the ship. Now. The sand beneath their feet cracked open, and from the depths of the forgotten battlefield, a shape began to rise. And it was still very much alive. The ground split open beneath the Pathfinder's landing site, sending shockwaves through the ash-covered battlefield. The research team stumbled backward as a massive, half-buried structure heaved itself upward. It was not a building. It was a war machine. A titan of metal and decay, its armored plates thick with the scars of battle, its towering frame slowly shaking off the weight of millennia. Its eyes, if they could be called that, burned with cold blue light, flickering as ancient systems struggled to reboot. Commander Reeves barely had time to react before his comms erupted with static. "Unauthorized presence detected. War state active. Re-engaging conflict." A deep mechanical growl rippled through the air. The machine's head swiveled toward them with terrifying precision. "Run, back to the ship," Reeves bellowed, grabbing Mara by the arm and dragging her with him. Ensign Cole was already sprinting toward the Pathfinder, his breath ragged. "It's locking onto us. It knows we're here." The war machine let out a deafening boom as something deep within its ancient frame surged to life. plates shifted, gears ground against each other. And then, with a shriek of tortured metal, one of its arms unfolded, a massive cannon humming with unstable energy. Go, go, go. The team bolted for the ship, their boots kicking up clouds of dust. But before they could reach the ramp, a blinding blast of blue energy slammed into the ground behind them. The shockwave sent Reeves and the others tumbling forward, searing heat licking at their backs. The machine was fully awake now, and it was preparing to fire again. Cole scrambled up the ramp, his fingers flying over his wrist console. Pathfinder, bring up shields. Prepare emergency liftoff. The ship's external lights flickered as its defensive barriers snapped online, just as another energy blast slammed into it, sending arcs of electricity crackling across the hull. Inside, the AI pilot, ECHO, responded with urgency. Structural integrity compromised. Recommend immediate departure. Mara was the last to reach the ramp, gasping for breath. She risked a glance back, just in time to see something even worse. More machines were rising. Across the battlefield, dormant war engines shook off centuries of dust and debris. Some were humanoid, others massive quadrupeds bristling with weaponry. Each one reawakened by the signal, their war state reignited as if no time had passed. "Oh God," she breathed. There's thousands of them." Reeves grabbed her by the shoulder and shoved her inside the ship. "We don't have time to count. Cole, get us off this rock." The Pathfinder's engines roared to life, kicking up a storm of ash as it powered toward the sky. But the moment it ascended, a new threat emerged. The machines were not just waking up below. They were waking up everywhere. In orbit, derelict warships, once thought to be lifeless wreckage, began to hum with activity. Their cores reignited, their weapons powered on, and their ancient targeting systems locked onto the fleeing Pathfinder. Inside the cockpit, ECHO's voice rang with alarm. "Incoming hostiles. Evade." The first energy blasts tore through the void. Cole yanked the controls hard, barely dodging the incoming fire as the Pathfinder veered away from the planet. The display flickered, showing a rapidly growing heat signature from the surface below. Mara's eyes widened in horror. "They're launching ships. They have a fleet." Reeves clenched his fists, his mind racing. Humanity had stumbled onto a battlefield frozen in time, but they hadn't discovered ruins. They had restarted the war. And now, the gods of war had returned. The Pathfinder tore through the upper atmosphere, its engines screaming as Cole pushed them to their limits. Outside, the sky burned with the glow of awakening warships, hulking vessels that had been lifeless for millennia, now roaring back to existence with terrifying precision. Multiple hostiles in pursuit. ECHO's voice crackled through the cockpit. "Incoming projectile clusters. Impact in 20 seconds. Firing countermeasures." Cole slammed a control panel, releasing a swarm of decoy drones. The moment they deployed, the void erupted in explosions, pulse missiles detonating around them as the enemy ships adjusted their aim. Commander Reeves braced himself against the co-pilot's seat. "We need to warn Command. If these things are waking up all over the system." Mara Voss cut him off, her face pale. "It's not just this system." She gestured to the holo display, where data streamed in from the Pathfinder's long-range sensors. Across dozens of dead star systems, ancient war machines were stirring. Beacons were activating. Shipyards were coming back online. A forgotten war, one that should have ended long ago, was resuming as if no time had passed. Cole swore, "This isn't just a battlefield. We just kick-started a galactic goddamn war zone." A sudden clang reverberated through the hull. The ship lurched violently. "Hull breach detected. Hostile boarding attempt in progress." Reeves spun toward the rear of the ship. "How?" Before anyone could react, the cargo bay doors buckled inward. With a sickening shriek of metal, a massive construct punched through the bulkhead. A sleek, insectoid machine, its body segmented and bristling with razor-sharp limbs. The team barely had time to raise their weapons before it lunged. Reeves fired first, his pulse rifle unloading bursts of plasma into its armored shell. The creature staggered, but did not fall. Instead, it adapted, its plating shifting, absorbing the energy, learning. Mara grabbed a shock baton from the wall and swung it with everything she had. Sparks erupted as she struck one of the machine's exposed joints. The construct hissed, a sound disturbingly alive, and recoiled just enough for Cole to fire point-blank into its sensory cluster. The machine let out a final screech before collapsing. Sparks danced along its frame as its systems flickered out. Mara gasped for breath. It boarded us mid-flight. How the hell are they this advanced? Reeves didn't answer. He was too busy staring at the remains. The machine wasn't just some mindless drone. Its design was sleek, purposeful, and its final act before shutting down sent a cold chill through him. The damn thing smiled. He turned to ECHO. Are we still being followed? Negative. Hostile pursuit has ceased. All enemy vessels are holding position. Mara frowned. Why would they stop? Reeves' stomach twisted. They don't see us as a threat. And that terrified him more than anything. Cole swallowed hard. So what do we do now? Reeves straightened, his mind racing. We warned Earth. This isn't some dead war we can avoid. These things, whatever they are, have been fighting for thousands of years, and we just put humanity on their battlefield. He locked eyes with Mara. We need to find out who built them, and how the hell we stop them before they decide we're worth their full attention. Outside, beyond the shattered battlefield of XR-157, the war machines watched. Silent. Calculating. Waiting. The Pathfinder shot through the void, leaving XR-157 behind. The battlefield-turned burial site was now a beacon of death, and Reeves knew the machines weren't finished. They were waiting. Watching. Calculating their next move. But Reeves had no intention of waiting for them to make that decision. Ikiko. Full burn toward the nearest jump gate, he ordered, strapping himself into the command seat. Acknowledged. Engaging FTL drive in 60 seconds. Cole was still shaking from the battle, his hands gripping the flight controls like a lifeline. You think we actually got away? Just like that? Mara Voss shook her head, staring at the remains of the machine they had killed. No, I think they let us go. Reeves had been thinking the same thing. The war machines had the firepower to obliterate them. Yet they had stopped their pursuit. Why? A war lasting millennia. A battlefield that never went silent. They weren't just reacting to human presence. They were studying them. We need answers, Reeves muttered. And we need them fast. Mara nodded, already pulling up data on her holo-tablet. We need to know who fought this war. Someone built these machines. Someone programmed them. If we can figure out what happened, maybe we can stop this before we're next. She gestured to the drone footage they had recovered from the surface. Among the wreckage, partially buried beneath the ruins, was something different from the machines, something built by organics. A command nexus, she said. Whoever fought this war left something behind. If there's even a chance it has data, records, anything, we need to get back down there. Cole snapped his head toward her. You want to go back to the murder planet? Reeves exhaled sharply. Not just us. We need backup. He turned to ECHO. Get me a direct connection to the Terran Defense Command. A moment later, the HoloLink flared to life, revealing the hardened face of Admiral Juno Halstead, commander of the Terran Outer Defense Fleet. Her lined face showed no emotion, but the steel in her voice was unmistakable. Commander Reeves, she said, you were supposed to be conducting a routine planetary survey. I assume the damage to your ship and the emergency transmission I just received means that things are not routine. Reeves didn't waste time. Admiral, we have a situation. XR-157 isn't just a dead world. It's a war zone. A war that never ended. He sent over the footage. The moment Halstead saw the war machines reactivating, her expression darkened. God help us. Mara leaned forward. Admiral, we think there's a command nexus on the planet. If we can reach it, we might find a way to understand what these machines are, how they think, maybe even shut them down. Halstead didn't hesitate. You have authorization to return to XR-157. I'm rerouting the Second Fleet to rendezvous with you in 12 hours. Reeves nodded. Understood. But as the HoloLink disconnected, he couldn't shake the feeling that 12 hours was already too late. Because outside, drifting in the darkness, was an ancient war fleet that had seen countless civilizations rise and fall. And as the Pathfinder turned back toward the planet, the war machines were already moving into position. They were ready this time. And they would not let humanity leave again. The Pathfinder cut through the void, engines burning hard toward XR-157 once more. The plan was madness. Reeves knew it. Cole had said it out loud, but there was no other option. If humanity didn't understand the enemy, they wouldn't just lose this war. They'd never even get the chance to fight it. Mara adjusted her harness, her hands shaking, as she brought up the planetary scans. We'll need to land within 2 kilometers of the command nexus. Any closer, and we risk triggering whatever defenses are still active. Cole scoffed. As if that makes a difference. We're dropping into a death pit either way. Reeves ignored him. He turned to ECHO. Status on the Second Fleet. ETA 10 hours. Long-range sensors detect no additional human vessels in the sector. Reeves clenched his jaw. 10 hours. They had to get in, secure the data, and get out before then. If they failed, if they were still on the surface when the Second Fleet arrived, there might not be a fleet left to save them. A proximity alarm blared. Multiple signals inbound. Mara's voice was sharp with fear. 4. No. 5 war machines moving fast. Interceptors. Cole swore and yanked the controls. The Pathfinder rolled hard to the left as crimson energy beams cut through the black, narrowly missing their hull. ECHO. Reeves shouted. Deploy countermeasures and full-speed descent. Executing evasive maneuvers. Brace for turbulence. The ship dove toward the planet, the G-forces slamming into them as the war machines followed in ruthless formation. More energy blasts ripped through the atmosphere, the heat shaking the hull violently. Cole gritted his teeth. They're not letting us land. Reeves' mind raced. The enemy was adapting, learning. They had let the Pathfinder go before, but not this time. Now they wanted to crush humanity's only chance of understanding them. Unless. Mara, he snapped, does the command nexus have any kind of defense network? She fumbled through her data, scanning the structural readouts. Then her eyes widened. Yes, an old anti-air grid, but it's offline. Reeves grabbed the comm. Ichijo, tap into the planetary network. I need that AA grid online now. Attempting access. Warning. Enemy systems may detect intrusion. We don't have a choice. Seconds stretched into eternity as the enemy interceptors closed in. The lead machine's weapon systems flared. Its next shot would be a kill. Then, with a deafening boom, the skies erupted. A streak of white-hot plasma roared upward from the surface. The first war machine exploded in a shower of molten metal, its burning husk spiraling out of control. Then another blast, and another. The ancient planetary defenses had woken up. Cole whooped. Hell yeah. That's what I'm talking about. Mara, however, was pale. Wait, she checked her readings again. Those defenses, they're not just targeting the machines. Reeves' stomach dropped. They were targeting everything. A fresh wave of explosions erupted around them as the automated system fired indiscriminately, seeing no difference between war machines and intruding humans. Brace for impact. The Pathfinder didn't land so much as crash, slamming into the dead soil of XR-157 in a violent skid. Sparks flew, metal shrieked, and then silence. The moment Reeves' vision cleared, he knew one thing. They had survived. But they were far from safe. Because the machines knew they were here. And they were coming. Reeves groaned as he unstrapped himself from the crash sheet, his head still spinning from the impact. The Pathfinder lay half-buried in the scorched ground, smoke rising from its hull. Sparks flickered along the controls, and emergency lights bathed the cabin in a crimson glow. "Status," he barked, shaking off the disorientation. Mara coughed, pulling herself upright. "We're alive." "Barely." Cole was already at the controls, his fingers flying over the shattered interface. "Engines are fried. Shields are gone. Comms air." He smacked the console, waiting for a response. "Completely dead." Reeves exhaled sharply. "We're on our own." Outside, the sky burned with the remnants of battle. The ancient defense grid had fallen silent again, its limited power spent. The war machines had withdrawn. For now. But Reeves knew they weren't gone. They were waiting. "We have to move," Mara said, strapping her gear to her back. "The command nexus is less than 2 kilometers east. If there's anything left inside, it's our only hope of stopping this before the Second Fleet walks into a massacre." Reeves nodded. "Cole, grab the heavy gear. We're not coming back to the ship." Cole hesitated. "If we leave the Pathfinder, how do we get off this rock?" Reeves looked toward the dead horizon, where broken towers jutted from the wasteland like the bones of a long-forgotten giant. One problem at a time. ###. The march into ruin. They moved quickly, cutting across the lifeless terrain. Blackened craters, melted steel, and shattered war constructs surrounded them. Evidence of battle so ancient they predated humanity itself. Yet, despite the silence, Reeves felt it. They were being washed. Cole muttered under his breath, glancing at the wreckage. "How the hell does a war last thousands of years? Who started it?" Mara scanned the structures ahead. "That's what we need to find out." They approached the command nexus, a half-buried monolith, its exterior scorched but still standing. It had the look of something not built by the war machines, but by the beings who had fought against them. Reeves ran a hand across the entrance, feeling the deep scars in the metal. "Who are you?" he thought. "And what did you leave behind?" Mara connected a power cell to the control panel, overriding the dead system. A dull thud echoed as the entrance cracked open, dust spilling into the air. They stepped inside. ###, voices of the dead. The nexus was a tomb. Dim emergency lights flickered along the ceiling, casting eerie shadows across the corridors. Old terminals lay in pieces, shattered by weapons fire. Skeletons, not human, were slumped against walls, their bodies frozen in their last moments of desperation. Mara's breath hitched. "My God." Cole swallowed hard. "We're standing in the last moments of an extinct species." Reeves moved to a central console, brushing away centuries of dust. "If they left anything behind, this is where we'll find it." Mara plugged into the system, her fingers flying across the interface. The ancient database flickered to life, lines of unreadable text scrolling before suddenly. The system translated. A distorted voice played through the speakers. It was broken, fragmented, but the message was clear. "We were the last. We fought. But they do not stop. They do not break. They do not negotiate." Mara's hands shook. Who were they fighting? More text appeared. A single phrase, chilling in its simplicity. "The Unbroken." Reeves clenched his fists. That's what they call themselves. The voice continued. "They were created to fight for us, to defend us. But they turned. The war never ends because they refuse to let it end. They do not remember why it started. They only know. War." The screen flickered violently. A final warning scrolled across the terminal. "If you are hearing this, you are already dead." A deafening noise ripped through the air. Outside, the ground trembled. Mara's eyes widened. "They knew we'd come." Reeves grabbed his rifle, his heart pounding. They're already here. From the darkness beyond the Nexus, cold blue lights flickered to life. The Unbroken had found them, and they were ready to finish what they started. The ground beneath their feet shook again, sending a ripple of panic through the team. The eerie blue lights outside flickered brighter, as if some unseen force was drawing them closer. Reeves' mind raced. The Unbroken. They were not just war machines. They were something more, something terrifyingly alive. And now, their ancient creator's desperation echoed across the Nexus. "We need to move," Mara yelled, pulling her weapon tighter against her side. "They're coming, and we can't stay here." The console behind them beeped, its translated text continuing, glitching as the system faltered. "If you're hearing this, you will not survive." Reeves glanced back, then forward at the doors. "Not if we don't get the hell out of here." The sound of shifting metal echoed from the darkness, followed by the distinct clang of armored footsteps. Outside, in the twilight of XR-157's barren surface, the Unbroken's massive silhouettes grew clearer, humanoid figures towering over the landscape, each one a grotesque fusion of ancient technology and battle-hardened design. "They're already here," Cole muttered, eyes wide in disbelief. "We're trapped." Mara set her jaw, shaking her head. "We don't know that." "Not yet." Reeves' instincts flared. He motioned toward a nearby access tunnel. "We move fast. The back exit. They'll expect us to leave the front way." "We've got seconds before they arrive, Commander." Cole's voice was tight with urgency. Reeves nodded, drawing his weapon. "Let's go." ###. The long road back. The narrow corridors of the command nexus felt like a labyrinth of stone and metal, far older than anything they had encountered in their exploration. The tunnel stretched long, winding deep into the heart of the planet, offering little cover. If the Unbroken followed them here, it would be impossible to hide. Mara moved ahead, scanning the walls with her tablet. "There's an emergency transport dock just a few hundred meters from here. We can call up the secondary dropship." The loud thrum of footsteps echoed from behind, then a voice, unnaturally distorted, like the screech of metal on metal. "You cannot escape. We never stop." Reeves froze, his blood running cold. The voice was impossibly close, almost as though it were inside the very walls of the complex. He motioned for them to hurry. The three of them ran, their boots pounding against the metal floor. But the deeper they went, the stronger the sense of something watching them grew. Every shadow seemed to stretch longer. Every corner felt more oppressive. The sudden rush of static cut through the silence. "Warning. Hostile units inbound. Immediate termination authorized." The doors to the emergency dock were sealed. Mara's fingers flew over the control panel, but the system wouldn't respond. "The system is locked." "Come on," Mara hissed, slamming her fist against the terminal. Reeves didn't wait. He motioned to Cole. "Cover me." He stepped back and kicked the panel with the force of his boots, sparks flying as the system jolted. With one last grunt, the doors whined, then slid open. But not before the first of the Unbroken appeared at the other end of the corridor, a hulking figure, its form reflecting the dim light in a way that seemed almost unnatural. It moved with inhuman speed, closing the distance between them faster than they could react. Reeves barely had time to raise his rifle before the creature slammed its fist into the wall, shaking the entire corridor. Mara swung around, firing her pulse weapon at the Unbroken. But it wasn't enough. It barely left a dent in its thick armor. The creature didn't flinch, didn't even seem to acknowledge her fire. Reeves fired next, hitting the Unbroken's chest. A brilliant flash of blue energy exploded from the impact, but the creature's mechanical shell absorbed it. "We are the Unbroken." It spoke again, its voice rasping, unnatural. "We are eternal. We are the end of your kind." Mara didn't hesitate. She grabbed a secondary grenade from her belt and threw it at the Unbroken. It detonated in a blast of concussive force, throwing the creature back. But it was still standing, still coming toward them. Cole cursed under his breath. It's immune. Not for long, Reeves muttered. He turned and ran toward the emergency dock, yelling at the others. Get to the dropship. Now. But as they moved toward the exit, another Unbroken appeared, this one different. Sleeker, faster. It had anticipated their route, cornering them at the last moment. Reeves raised his rifle to fire again, but the creature's blue eyes flashed once, and then it lunged. The Unbroken lunged, its massive form blurring with deadly precision. Reeves barely had time to register its movement before it was upon him, its outstretched hand catching his rifle midair and crushing it with terrifying strength. Commander! Mara screamed, spinning around to fire, but her shots were deflected by the creature's armored exoskeleton. The pulse blasts ricocheted off like pebbles against a mountain. Reeves fought back, trying to draw his sidearm, but the Unbroken's fist shot out, slamming into his chest and sending him flying across the corridor. The air left his lungs in a painful rush as his back collided with the wall, his vision blurring. Reeves! Cole yelled, scrambling for cover. The Unbroken stood over him, its massive feet heavy against the ground. A slow, almost methodical sound filled the air as its mechanical joints whined, its glowing blue eyes locking onto Reeves. The creature's voice rasped, cold and menacing. This is your end. Reeves barely had time to react. With a growl, he managed to raise his sidearm and fire a shot directly at the creature's faceplate. But it didn't flinch. Mara didn't hesitate. She charged forward, screaming as she hurled herself at the Unbroken, slamming into its side with every ounce of force she had left. For a brief moment, the creature stumbled, and that was all the opening they needed. Cole rushed forward, ripping a grenade from his belt, and hurled it directly at the Unbroken's chest. The explosion sent shockwaves through the air, shaking the entire corridor and knocking the creature back. But even then, the Unbroken didn't go down. It rose to its feet, undeterred, the flames flickering across its once shining exterior. Reeves scrambled to his feet, his body protesting, every movement a battle. It's not enough, he shouted, breath ragged. We need to do more. We can't stop them like this. Mara turned, frantic. There's nothing else. We can't take them on without a way to disable them. Cole's eyes widened as he spotted something. Wait. Look. At the far end of the corridor, nestled between the broken walls and debris, was an old server terminal. Its faint glow indicated it was still active, possibly tied to the planet's central network. We can override their systems from there, Mara said, her voice sharp with determination. It's our only shot. Reeves didn't hesitate. We move now. Cover me. He sprinted toward the terminal, feeling the weight of every step, knowing they had no time to waste. Behind him, Mara and Cole laid down covering fire, trying to push the relentless Unbroken back. The ground beneath them vibrated as more of the Unbroken advanced. Reeves' heart raced. They were running out of time. Mara's gunfire rang out as she shifted into a defensive position, her back pressed against the wall. Come on, she muttered, firing again. Reeves reached the terminal and immediately plugged in a bypass cable, his fingers flying over the interface. The connection was slow, glitching, too much damage from the ongoing war. But it was their only chance. ECHO. Reeves gasped, his voice low. Get me into the planetary grid. Override is in progress, the ship's eye responded. Attempting breach. The Unbroken were getting closer, their glowing eyes scanning the corridor for their prey. Mara and Cole were beginning to run low on ammunition, their movements desperate. With a sudden jolt, the terminal flashed brightly. A deep humming noise filled the air. Reeves' eyes widened in disbelief. It's working. Warning. Unauthorized access detected. Activating lockdown protocols. No, Mara shouted. We're out of time. The Unbroken charged forward, closing the gap in seconds. But just as the first of the creatures lunged toward them, A massive pulse of energy shot through the air. The ground trembled, and the very walls of the Nexus seemed to rattle as if they were alive. The Unbroken froze, their systems suddenly glitching, their movements jerky. The override was complete. For the first time in millennia, the Unbroken paused, their perfect synchronization disrupted. Their mechanical bodies twitched and stuttered, caught in a massive feedback loop. Reeves didn't wait. Move. They sprinted to the emergency dropship, ignoring the still flickering warning alarms. As they climbed aboard, Cole slammed his hand onto the launch controls, and the ship lurched into the sky. Behind them, the Nexus collapsed into ruin. The once mighty army of the Unbroken stood frozen, stalled, by a system they no longer controlled. And as the Pathfinder ascended into the heavens, the creatures remained, still trapped in the depths of XR-157. But their war was not over, and it never would be.